Get all the news and controversy of the NFL right here on the Blitz Zone with your hosts, Eric Rosen and Jamie Hickson, as they discuss the hot topics concerning your favorite players and team, the winners, the losers, the big plays, and the big hits from around the league. Right here, only on the Blitz Zone.
It's Friday, October 2nd, 2015. It's that time of the hour for your favorite NFL and college football program. Welcome to Week 4 of the Blitz Zone. We're coming to you live from the studios of CTV in Staten Island, New York. I'm your host, Eric Rosen. And here next to me, as always, my main man, co-pilot, and good friend, Mr. Jamie, the sportsman, Hickson.
Sir, as always, it's wonderful speaking to you. It's funny you mentioned co-pilot because it seems like the Jets have been in need of a co-pilot for the last week or so, especially after that disastrous performance at home against Philly, the game of the so-called whiteout. Well, it turned out to be a total knockout that the Eagles put on the Jets.
Well, towards the end with that interception, but that wasn't the only thing that we saw this past week in Week 3. How about the fact that you had three running backs with 3 rushing touchdowns? Yeah. Joseph Randle, Devonta Freeman, and Jamal Charles each had 3 rushing touchdowns. Mm-hmm. You saw a team get their first shutout since 2002. You had a quarterback in his first road start have his best QBR in his entire career. We saw plenty of amazing and some disturbing things that took place this week. Mostly amazing, though, this past week. And this is why I love football. I love doing this show. But we got a lot of news to get to before we get into the recap of last week. Let's start with the Chicago Bears, as I mentioned. First shutout since 2002 when they lost 26-0 to Seattle. You think new head coach John Fox with his experience. Ryan Pace, rookie general manager. And look at what's befallen them. 0-3, injured starting quarterback Jake Cutler with a hamstring injury. Alshon Jeffrey missing yet another. Will miss his 3rd straight game this week, which is a big blow. But yet their defense hasn't clicked because Vic Fangio, the coordinator they brought from San Francisco, has a different scheme. So they decide to trade off 2 of their pieces.
Yep. That just goes to show you the more things change, the more they stay the same. The Bears basically bankroll this entire season on the new hierarchy, and they still just can't get it right. And do not even worry about Jay Cutler. I still say Jay Cutler is complete garbage. Jimmy Clausen is no future Hall of Famer either, but trust me when I say that the Bears are going to be so better off without Cutler taking the snaps from center. He's just been complete. He's just been complete incompetency ever since he started taking the snaps from center. Somehow the Bears saw it in him to give him a contract extension. I just have no idea why.
He led the league in turnovers last year at 24, but it's
not even him that's the sole culprit. The defense has not done anything this season. I mean, look at how the Cardinals completely torched that Bears defense about a week ago.
Oh, yeah, Seattle. And then, they torched them for 40. They had 40-plus points in that game. And then Seattle this past weekend, their home opener, winning 26.
Shuts them out.
Including, special teams really messed up. They gave up that big 105-yard touchdown to Tyler Lockett, who, by the way, one of my favorite rookie players. That guy can really make special teams his own. But, Jonathan Bostic, he was a second-round pick out of my Florida Gators back in 2013.
Yep.
He got traded to the New England Patriots, so he's joining a very good elite of pass rushers that they have. And what's good about this for him, it fits his scheme because they like to change the scheme of that defense. They're very hybrid. They fit their scheme to who they play each week. That's why the Patriots are successful, too. Not just the offense of Brady, but their defense plays to their opponents.
That's called making adjustments. When you make the proper adjustments, that's when you succeed.
And then Jared Allen, of course, a guy who nearly came within a half sack of Michael Strahan's record a few years back with the Vikings. Now went from Chicago to Carolina. So he left the Titanic. That was the Bears at 0-3, and now he's with an undefeated team that's tied for first in the NFC South. But here's the crazy thing. Even with the undefeated record that Carolina has, they've had a slew of injuries in their front seven. Charles Johnson has had injury with his hamstring. Luke Kuechly suffered that concussion week 1 against Jacksonville. And even Frank Alexander lost the year in the preseason. Mm-hmm. And Coney Ealy, the second-year player out of Minnesota, injured, hasn't even done well in full time.
That's why making the Allen trade was so crucial. That way he can try and fill at least one of the holes that the Panthers have defensively.
He has 134 sacks all-time in his career. That's 9th most in NFL history. Mm-hmm. He's really going to be great for this 4-3. He's going to be good for this 3-4 front. I can't wait to see what he does. Now, New Orleans, another 0-3 team like the Chicago Bears, which I said my first episode that the surprise person that could be on the hot seat is Sean Payton, and honestly, it may not be much of a surprise.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Saints really have nothing going for them. Their quarterback has gotten hurt. Their defense has been hurting even more. And now they just tried to get some help when they acquired the kid from the Patriots.
Michael Humanawani. Believe me, I know it's a mouthful, folks. Mm-hmm. But you know what? He's there to provide some depth because Ben Watson is no Jimmy Graham.
No.
They traded their stalwart to Seattle in the offseason. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is it's management's fault. They really screwed themselves with the cap. They were $32 million over the cap going into the season.
Yeah.
When you do that, you put your team in such a position that you have to sell off some of your assets. They had to let Junior Galecko. They had to trade Kenny Stills. Mm-hmm. This is why the team is where they are right now.
Yeah.
And Humanawani hopefully will actually get some starting quality. He could have a big impact this Sunday night against Dallas, depending if Drew Brees is actually quarterbacking, not Luke McGowan.
Oh, please don't get me started.
Okay, how about another team in such turmoil? The 49ers, they gave up 47 points last week to Arizona, and their cornerback, Sharice Wright, is seeking a trade or release from the team.
Talk about wanting to jump ship. I mean, I know that it's only been 3 games, but come on now. It's gotten to the point where some of these guys are just not showing any respect or faith whatsoever for their team.
Well, he's feeling disrespected because he never even gets a single start in any of the 3 games that they played, and he even wrote on his Twitter account before he had to take it down, politics as usual. Mm-hmm. So
did it ever occur to him that maybe he should try and look in the mirror and look at his own play to see exactly why he's not getting a fair shake?
Yeah, behind guys like Tremaine Brock and Kenneth Acker. I know. So I wouldn't be shocked they give him his release. Now, the Cleveland Browns, another team that's really stellar, just signed Austin Davis, their third-string QB, to a 2-year extension. This is sort of a strange thing going on because you have, I know, your other favorite, McCown, Josh, as their number 1. Then you got Johnny Manziel, who honestly should be the starter after his victory against Tennessee.
Yeah, and a lot of unnamed teammates, if you will, have been really upset over the way that Manziel has been treated. The guy is trying to pay his dues right now. He's already gone through the rehab. He's trying to be the good teammate. And what does he get for his troubles? He gets benched in favor of Josh McCown. And what happens? The Browns wind up being on the short end of the Raider game.
I know, and now this guy, the 26-year-old undrafted player out of Southern Miss, of course, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, home to favorite son, Brett Favre. But nonetheless, they see him as a potential starter, Austin Davis. He was with the St. Louis Rams.
And he played pretty well in his trial with the Rams.
And he was waived by them at the final cuts. That's why they signed him because, with the injury that took place early in the season with McCown, they really wanted some depth. And that's what Austin Davis comes in. But right now, if things don't go well between either Manziel or McCown, don't be shocked somewhere down the season you see Austin Davis as a starting QB. That would be the 23rd starting quarterback they've had since they came back into the league.
Which just goes to show you the continuing incompetence that Browns management has had.
Well, in some other news, Cody Parkey, the Eagles place kicker, course, is on the IR with a season-ending injury. And they signed Caleb Sturgis, formerly of the Miami Dolphins, who unfortunately has had a terrible career, 77.5% success rate on field goals.
It's nothing to crow about, but at the same time, they needed a kicker. Unfortunately, they had to go to the lowest common denominator, if you will.
And then did you hear this week, the New York Giants, even though they got their first win against Washington on Thursday night, they worked out former Giant Hakeem Nicks and former Patriot and Bronco slot receiver Wes Welker.
Yeah. Nicks is no surprise to me because the Giants actually had the Giants actually played well when Hakeem Nicks was in the lineup. Wes Welker is kind of a shock to me because he's had quite a bit of a history with concussions. I just hope that he's 100% enough where he can help somebody, whether it's with the Giants or somebody else. But Hakeem Nicks, there's a real history there. I mean, he was a Giant for 7 seasons. It just did not work out well for him at all at Indianapolis. And quite frankly, he needs to be given a fair shake someplace.
I know. What news around the league? And believe me, there's more to come with potential QB injuries we've had this year. Romo, Cutler, Roethlisberger. And now let's introduce possibly Andrew Luck to that slate with a shoulder injury because he didn't even come out for practice today, which really shows you something because that's when the media comes to see the Colts practice.
Yeah.
And they need him this week at home against Jacksonville because look who you got starting. It's either going to be Matt Hasselbeck or Alex Tanney.
Well, at least Matt Hasselbeck has had a bit of a shelf life in the league. I mean, he's been a quarterback on a Seattle team that was in a Super Bowl many years ago, but it's been a while for him, and now it's down to him or the other guy as the guy to fill in for Luck. That's if he's not able to go on Sunday.
Let's hope that's not the case because believe me, even though he's had 7 interceptions on the year at Luck, he really needs to turn that around because he hasn't had that many picks since his rookie season in 2012.
And I think he is going to be able to turn it around. He's got 13 more games left, well, at least 14 weeks left in the season to try and turn things around. And Luck has already emerged as one of the better quarterbacks in the league, so I would see him definitely turning it around somewhere down the line. But at the same time, a quarterback is only as good as his offensive line, and the O-line has just not been there for him.
I know, it's been really terrible. Now let's recap Week 3 of the 2015 season, starting with the Monday night game in Dairyland. The Packers taking on the Chiefs, and it was Aaron Rodgers, 333 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's 5 touchdowns, 3 of which went to Randall Cobb, including on a 20 and then James Jones on a 27-yard touchdown reception in the second quarter when they led 17 points. And they end up beating the Chiefs 38-28 despite the fact that Jamal Charles had 3 rushing touchdowns on the day.
Just goes to show you who the better team is. Do you know that there was a lot of debate over who the better quarterback was in this league right now? A lot of people are saying it's Aaron Rodgers. He's certainly playing like it. I still say Tom Brady is the man.
Oh, without a doubt. Okay, let's go to Dallas. First game, sans Tony Romo and Des Bryant together, going up against Matt Ryan and the hot Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, hot Atlanta is more like it. They overcame a 3-touchdown deficit in this one with 32 unanswered points, including a 2-point conversion. And this just goes to show you
and 3 14-point deficits.
And this just goes to show you how vulnerable the Cowboys are without Tony Romo and Des Bryant in their offense. I mean, putting up 28 without those two was impressive, but at the same time, this completely falls on the Cowboy defense not getting the job done in the second half. And Matt Ryan, a guy who has really been roasted for not winning the big game in the past, finally wins a big game on the road with his offense intact. Just a huge win for the Falcons.
And Julio Jones, 3rd straight 100-yard performance, 164 yards, including that big 2-yard score in the fourth quarter that helped seal the deal. Devonta Freeman, 3 rushing touchdowns, 141 yards, taking place of Tevin Coleman, the rookie at Indiana. So that was a huge 39-28 victory for Atlanta. And then Indianapolis finally gets its first victory on the road, beating the Titans 35-33. Luck's 2 touchdown passes, 56 seconds apart of each other in the fourth quarter. And how about that big pick six in the beginning of the game by Dwight Lowry, the former Jet, who's in the secondary for the Colts for 69 yards off of Mariota. That's the second straight week he's been picked off.
Huge win for the Colts right there. It's a real shame that the Titans had to be 2 points short because Marcus Mariota had a great game of his own, between 300 and 400 yards passing in the game. But once again, defense, and it was the Titans' defense that really is the culprit here.
And the failed 2-point conversion by Jalston Fowler. He was stopped, on that potential game-tying play. All right, 35-33. And then the Raiders, the silver and black, beat the Browns, the crap Browns, 27-20. 2 touchdowns from Derek Carr in the game. 139 yards from Latavius Murray. And they end an 11-game road losing streak. They ended also a 16-game road losing streak in Eastern Conference games, dating back to 2009.
Could this be the year that the Raiders turn the cheek? Is this the year where people say these are not the same Raiders anymore? I don't see it happening. Quite frankly, this is, a byproduct of a soft part of the schedule. A win is a win, but at the same time, let's see them do the same thing against a team that's a step up in class, though.
But you know what? You got to give it up to Amari Cooper, the rookie out of Alabama, 134 yards on the day. Really, him and Carr, as I've always said, had a great rapport with each other. Latavius Murray is becoming that running back that they really wanted since Run DMC was years ago when he was healthy. And McCown, yes, he's part to blame, but how about that fumble on the punt by Travis Benjamin, about 4-1 left, despite the fact he had a big he had a touchdown, 4-yard touchdown that pulled him within a touchdown with about 6:28 left. But that fumble really killed them.
Yeah.
And they lost 27-20. All right, going quickly. The Cincinnati Bengals end up beating the Baltimore Ravens in a back-and-forth game, 28-24. A.J. Green, 227 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day.
That's the story of the game right there. Green just shredding that weak Ravens secondary. And all this talk about whether Joe Flacco was on the decline, I think you can stop that talk right now. He's still at the top of his game in my eyes. And also, the same thing goes for the Bengals quarterback.
Andy Dalton,
Red Dalton, if you will. All this talk about him being a mediocre guy, I think you can stop that talk right there. He's still at the top of his game as well.
And the fact that old man Steve Smith, well, he's not really, he may be old, but he plays like he's in his 20s. He had 186 yards on the day. He's the man.
Yeah.
No matter what age he gets better and better. All right, how about the Jaguars got embarrassed 51-17 by the Patriots on the road. Brady's 2 touchdowns, including the first one making his 400th career, joining Marino, Favre, and current player Peyton Manning.
That's apples and oranges right there. I mean, the Patriots were worlds apart as a team compared to the Jaguars. Naturally, it was going to turn into a blowout.
Okay, NFC South rivalry. Saints end up losing to the Carolina Panthers 27-22. Newton had a pair of touchdowns, both to Greg Olsen, and a 13-yard rushing touchdown on a bootleg play. And it all ended with an interception by Josh Norman in the end zone with about 1:09 to go off of Luke McCown. First start without Drew Brees since 2006.
One, Cam Newton, I think you can pretty much say, is close to being a primetime quarterback right now. And 2, the Saints are in crisis mode, especially with Drew Brees hurt.
And, well, the Houston Texans, they thought they were in crisis with quarterback, but I think Ryan Mallett is their answer for the rest of the season, not Brian Hoyer, honestly. And he led the team to a 19-9 victory over Tampa Bay, 228 yards and a touchdown. But Alfred Blue, in place for Arian Foster, had 139 yards. The second-year player at LSU, really shining. Then the All-day Adrian Peterson had another 100-yard performance at home, beating helping the Vikings beat the Chargers 31-14, 126 yards, 20 rushes. He even had a vintage run right around end for a 43-yard scamper to set up with a vicious stiff arm on Jimmy Wilson. It was vintage Adrian Peterson all the way, 31-14. And you know what? The Chargers are missing their 2 tight ends. Their front line is being decimated by injuries, so they need to work on that. All right. In St. Louis, even with the black and gold fans there, they still couldn't fill that place.
Yeah, which means another blackout in St. Louis. But the bottom line is it's still a Steelers victory, but I worry about Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, he had a really serious knee injury, which forced him out of the game.
Third quarter, yeah, very bad.
So what is this going to mean? I mean, he's already... I assume that he missed the Baltimore game last night.
He definitely did. He's going to be out for 6 weeks with this injury.
Yeah.
So this is
curtains for the Steelers. I mean, they can only do so much with their backup quarterback. This is where they really miss Big Ben right now.
Yep.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Michael Vick is the backup. Obviously, this is not making any Steeler fans happy.
But at least they were able to hold the Rams to 2 for 10 on third down. They did win 12-6.
I think this is where it's going to have to be for the Steelers. It's going to have to be the defense for them. Speaking of big losses, what about what the 49ers suffered at the hands of the Cardinals? 47-7. Who saw this happening? Carson Palmer, again. Carson Palmer, 311 yards passing. I always say that a guy can always, well, didn't really say it, but I always notice that a particular guy who's a good player always has to be a good fit in a particular spot. Carson Palmer has been a really great fit with the Cardinals right now after really struggling to find himself both in Cincinnati and in Oakland. He's suddenly become the guy with the Cardinals right now.
He's 17-2 in his last 19 starts. He hasn't lost a start since December of 2013.
Now, if only he
Week
can
17.
keep himself healthy.
I know. Let's hope that's not the same case like it was last year when they won 9-1, then lost 5 out of the last 6. Okay, now 4 out of the last 5. Anyway, they did win 47-7. Kaepernick was picked off 4 times, 2 of which were returned for touchdowns. Talk about disasters right here. Miami, in their home opener, ended up losing 41-14 at the hands of the Bills. Tyrod Taylor's 277 yards had his best QBR rating in his in his 3 starts he's had in his career. This was his first NFL road start.
I got to admit, this was really impressive on Tyrod Taylor's part, going up against a really good Dolphin defense with Ndamukong Suh, the main guy there, and Tyrod Taylor gets almost a 300-yard game out of it. Could it be that Buffalo really is a team to watch for this season?
Oh, without a doubt. This could be the team that could give New England fits. But then again, if you saw in Week 2, New England really took care of business in Buffalo. Maybe this time Buffalo could return the favor when they go to Gillette Stadium, but that's almost next to impossible. But they did have 429 yards. Tannehill was picked off 3 times in this game. The defense, honestly, has had 1 sack in the first 3 games of the year. You know, for all the money they paid for Sue and all these other players, they got to get their act together. As for the Chicago Bears, as we mentioned, they lost 26-0. First shutout since 2002.
Easy pickings right there. The Seahawks are just 10 times better than the Bears.
And Cam Chancellor's return was impactful for sure. And then you have Peyton Manning and the Broncos going to the Motor City on Sunday Night Football, and huge fourth down touchdown for 45 yards to Demaryius Thomas. That was a big play. They ended up winning 24-12 in that game.
That was a game that the Lions really, really let get away from them. A couple of just costly turnovers wound up being the result in this game.
And the New York Giants, of course, beat the Redskins last week. Huge on Thursday Night Football, getting their first win of the year. They got a big matchup coming up this weekend. And the Jets losing big at home. I was there with my family, 24-17. They were outscored 24-7 in the first half. But in the second half, they kept the Eagles off the scoreboard. They had a big fumble recovery with about 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You thought that they were going to take advantage of that. But instead, Fitzpatrick throws his second interception of the day. His third interception of the day, and it was just curtains for the Jets.
Yeah, that was the game
24/7.
where the Jets were hoping to have the whiteout in the stands. This just goes to show you that performance from Fitzpatrick, only confirms my my thoughts about the guy as a quarterback. The guy is just not prime time as a player. They had a chance to really gain some momentum by taking advantage of a struggling team, and they didn't get the job done. But it wasn't all Fitzpatrick's fault. It was that punt return for a touchdown.
4 tacklers.
By Darren Sproles, in which he broke 4 tackles on the play.
Yeah.
That's shoddy special teams right there. That's number 1. Number 2,
Marshall.
yes, Brandon Marshall. He of the failed lateral. And when you see the replay, his forearm was down before the ball came loose. That should have been down by contact right there. That was not called. Third, the Jet defense actually played well in the second half. They completely shut out the Eagles in the second half. They had numerous opportunities to try and come back in this game. And what happens? It takes a costly turnover committed by Ryan Fitzpatrick, the same Ryan Fitzpatrick who I still say is complete fool's gold that winds up costing the Jets. Now the Jets have to right the ship in London when they host the Dolphins this weekend.
And we'll get into that game in just a bit. And that's all your Week 3 recap. Now let's go into Week 4, as you mentioned. But before we get into that game, we have 2 teams that are off this week. We have the Titans and the Patriots that are off this week. And you know what? Patriots 3-0. Hey, they deserve it. Titans need to, they could have won that game last week against Indy. Hopefully they'll work on those turnover, on that inability to get that 2-point conversion. Now let's go to last night's Thursday night game. Classic AFC North rivalry. Baltimore Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers. First game without Roethlisberger. And this really showed, especially in the end. But you know what? You can't blame all of it on Vic. Honestly, It wasn't all Michael Vick's fault. It was one person, Josh Scobie.
Yeah.
2 field goal opportunities he blew.
Mm-hmm.
Huge.
Yeah.
Especially in the end when they could have sealed the game with 6 points, but instead they allowed the Ravens to get back in the game, including Kamar Aiken had that big catch to set up the game-tying field goal by Justin. By Justin. And then by Justin Tucker. And then Justin Tucker, the game-winning field goal in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you seen this 3-point game, between these 2 teams?
Quite often. A lot of these games have been decided by 3 points or less. That's why the rivalry is so heated, because the games have been so close.
Well, now at least the Ravens got their first win, because last week they had their first 0-3 start in franchise history. If they would have went 0-4, it would have been total calamity. Now let's go into the rest of the games of Week 4, starting in jolly old London, England, between the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins. Jets coming off a terrible loss to the Eagles. Dolphins coming off a terrible loss to the Bills. Both teams in desperation mode for that W.
Yeah. Interesting that you call the Jets, who are a 2-1 team, being in desperation mode. When you think about it, the Dolphins are a lot more desperate for a victory than the Jets are, but I have to say this. The game's being played in London, and the game is going to start at 9:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time, which is about 2:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon London time.
That's around tea time.
Yeah, which is basically around tea time. I know the league wants to really try and popularize the game, but you just don't try and bring a game, an American game, into the heart of Europe, if you will, because quite frankly, the game is just brushed off by the majority of the Europeans.
Well,
the people in London don't even think that our kind of football is real football.
I know.
And somehow they're able to draw 100,000 fans at Wembley Stadium.
They probably pay some of those people to go there and be fans and all that for the day. I think that's speculation. That's not real. That's not real because who knows? Maybe there is an interest, But you know what? In this is the first time the Jets are actually going to London. They've never been. The first time it was in London, it was the Giants who played the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm. But you just do not try and popularize an American sport in Europe. You just don't do it. Quite frankly, I don't know how they're able to sell out the building, but somehow they're doing so. So here's another thing. The Jets are actually bringing 300 rolls of toilet paper on the plane to London because